There's something magical about opening your first Dungeons & Dragons box. You don't know the rules yet, you barely know the world, but the moment you crack it open, you can feel it. Adventure is waiting. These boxes, humble as they are, have sparked the imagination of millions and launched lifelong passions and built entire communities. Starter sets have always been a kind of welcome mat for Dungeons & Dragons. Simple boxes packed with rules, dice, and just enough mystery to pull you in. Let's take a journey through their legacy, from a peek at their earliest incarnations to diving into the box sets that defined 5th edition's gateway into the game today. This is the D&D Starter Set, the most important TTRPG product. The starter set has always had one job: to be the bridge. When people hear about D&D for the first time, whether it's through friends, pop culture, or a sense of curiosity, they often feel a kind of barrier. There's a perception that D&D is too big, too complicated, too intimidating. Well, that's where the starter set comes in. It lowers the drawbridge and says, come on in, we'll guide you. It's not a full encyclopedia, it's a sampler platter, a pilot episode. It gives you just enough to play the game and fall in love with it, but leaves you hungry for more. Before 5th edition, D&D had already established a long tradition of boxed beginner sets. The original 1977 basic set was OG players' first taste of the game, and it served as an entry point to expanding the world of Advanced Dungeons & Dragons. In the 1980s, the BECMI, aka the Basic, Expert, Companion, Master, and Immortal box sets, gave D&D a modular learning path. These boxes were wildly successful, especially the Red Box 1983 set, featuring the iconic cover art by Larry Elmore. That box itself introduced tons and tons of players to the game, thanks to its clear writing, solo play tutorials, and wide retail availability, finding itself in not only game shops but also toy stores and department store shelves. But the journey didn't stop there. As D&D evolved, so did the starter sets. We fast forward to 3rd edition, and we saw the release of the Adventure Game box set, a sleek, more polished version that aimed to introduce new players with a little more structure. This set offered a taste of D&D's deeper rules, allowing players to ease in without feeling overwhelmed. Then came 4th edition, which took a bold new approach. The starter sets for 4th edition, complete with maps, tokens, and streamlined rules, were designed to make the game more accessible to new players than ever. However, 4th edition's shift towards a more tactical MMO-style inspired system, heavily influenced by games that were popular at the time, like World of Warcraft, didn't quite hit the mark for many longtime fans. The focus on extremely structured encounters, powers and ability-like spells that mimicked MMO-style abilities and mechanics, and more board game-like approach to combat alienated a lot of the traditional D&D crowd. As a result, the 4th edition starter sets didn't catch on as much as their predecessors. In fact, many turned to Pathfinder, which kept the classic 3.5 style rules and provided a more familiar traditional D&D experience while continuing to heavily expand on options. While 4th edition's attempts to attract a new audience had some success, it didn't fully resonate with everyone in the community, and this poor reception helped spur a return to the order of beloved systems. The shift in player preference created a unique challenge for Wizards of the Coast at the time. How could they recapture the magic of D&D's past, while also appealing to a more modern audience? 4th edition's attempt to modernize the game, with its focus on those tactical and game-like style mechanics, had failed to bridge that gap, and in its wake, Pathfinder flourished by offering a familiar, expansive alternative. The challenge for them was clear. D&D had to evolve, but it needed to remember its roots. Enter 5th edition. Wizards had learned a lot from the mixed reception of 4th edition and the rise of Pathfinder. They knew they had to strike that delicate balance between offering enough new content to captivate players while ensuring that the essence of what made D&D so beloved at the time didn't get lost in the shuffle as it did before. What was needed was an entry point that both could appeal to veterans and welcome newcomers. Released in 2014, the 5e starter set came at the perfect time. Live streams were beginning to pick up steam, Critical Role was just over the horizon, and nostalgia was tugging at players both old and new, and Wizards of the Coast needed a way to welcome people back in without dropping 100 pages of rules in their lap. Enter the Lost Mine of Phandelver. Tucked into the starter set box alongside a small rulebook, some dice, and a few pre-generated character sheets was what would become the new gold standard for introductory adventures. A tight, 64-page storybook set in the Sword Coast, wrapped around a sleepy little town called Phandelver. And this adventure in itself is often called the best intro into D&D ever made. And why? Because it did so many things right. You start on a road. A goblin ambush throws players into the action within minutes of the first session. From there, you're pulled into a web of quests with different factions, secrets, there's dungeon delving, and even a villain with a cool name. It's everything D&D needs to be, nothing more, nothing less. There's just enough structure for new DMs to feel safe, and just enough freedom for players to feel like they're shaping the story, and most importantly, it feels like classic D&D, not in a throwback way, but in a timeless new way. For many, Phandelver wasn't just their first campaign, it was their first real adventure, the one they still talk about, the one that made them fall in love with the game. And what's wild is this starter set came out before the actual core rulebooks, something that we don't get to see today. Just the box, no player's handbook, no monster manual, no dungeon master's guide, just this slim starter kit, launching in July of 2014, a full month ahead of 5e's full release. And yet, it was enough. It won awards and sold over 120,000 copies in North America alone. And by 2018, that number had more than doubled. And if you ask around, you'll still find people, veterans and newcomers alike, who swear by it, who say that that little box was where everything clicked. Then, in 2016, something unexpected gave the game a whole new spotlight. Stranger Things dropped on Netflix, and with it came a wave of D&D nostalgia. Suddenly, D&D wasn't just back, it was thriving, and for thousands of new fans pouring in, the starter set was their launchpad. The kids on the screen were fighting demogorgons, rolling dice, talking about campaigns. It wasn't just a little background flavor or a single episode in the show, it was baked into the soul of the show. And for a generation that had never touched a character sheet, it planted the seed for so many. But it wasn't just TV that changed things. Around that same time, a group of nerdy-ass voice actors led by Matthew Mercer,
where a bunch of us nerdy-ass voice actors sit around and play Dungeons & Dragons,
started live streaming their own home game to a growing online audience. That show? You know it.
Critical Role.
Watching them felt like stepping into a great novel, a stage play, and someone's living room game all at once. It was funny, it was emotional, and it was raw, unscripted storytelling at its best. And it demystified D&D for so many. It didn't just show people the rules, it showed them a bit of the magic as well. Between Stranger Things and Critical Role's interest in D&D skyrocketed. Google searches exploded, and for the first time in decades, parents weren't warning their kids away from D&D. They were buying the starter set for them. But it wasn't just the game itself that saw a revival during this time. It was a part of a broader cultural wave, the geek culture renaissance, fueled by massive successes of comic book movies, epic fantasy series like Game of Thrones, and an explosion of interest in all things nerdy played a huge role in bringing D&D back into the spotlight. The fantasy genre was booming, and D&D fit perfectly into that landscape, offering a hands-on, immersive experience that allowed fans to create their own stories and worlds. At the same time, digital tools began to play a key role in making D&D more accessible than ever. Platforms like D&D Beyond, launched in 2017,
It's D&D Beyond.
revolutionized people's access to the game by providing easy access to digital character sheets, rules, references, and exclusive content. For a generation of gamers who grew up with digital tools, this integration felt natural, making it even easier to dive into the game without having to flip through a physical book or track things manually, and also helping enable those that played from a distance. The rise of online platforms for virtual tabletops like Roll20, Fantasy Grounds, and others also contributed to D&D's significant growth during this time. These platforms allowed players to connect and play remotely, which was a game changer for groups who couldn't meet in person. Whether it was friends from different parts of the world, a small group of players in a local community, or people just stuck at home because of COVID, virtual tabletops made it possible for D&D to reach a global audience, further solidifying the game's place in a modern gaming landscape. By the way, before we dive deeper, if you're enjoying the journey so far, consider dropping a like and smacking that subscribe button, as it helps the channel out a ton, and it makes sure we can keep exploring more of the hobby together and how to learn how to better run our games. Plus, we're getting so close to that 2,000 subscriber mark. Alright, back to the video. Just a few years after Lost Mine of Phandelver welcomed new players to the world of D&D, the Essentials Kit was announced in May of 2019, and it hit shelves of September that year. Building on the success of its predecessor, the Essentials Kit took everything that made the starter set great and expanded upon it. With a more customizable approach and a new adventure to dive into, this kit redefined what it meant to get started in D&D all over again. It was designed to be as approachable as ever, offering even more tools for both players and dungeon masters. It was a new kind of starter set. This time they shook things up. It wasn't just another box set, it was a full toolkit, designed to meet the needs of a new generation of players and dungeon masters. More tools, more options, more freedom. Included in the box were a handy DM screen, a rules booklet, and even sidekick rules that let DMs introduce new companions for players. There were cards to help manage conditions, magic items, and even initiative. It was all about making the game smoother for the DM and creating a less stressful experience for both sides. The adventure that came with the kit, Dragon of Ice Spire Peak, introduced a quest board structure, a less linear design than Phandelver's story. Here players could choose which quest to pursue, offering them more flexibility and replayability. No longer was the story on rails, it was modular, dynamic, and ready to be shaped by the choices of your players. And another standout feature that the Essentials Kit contained was the support for one-on-one play. For the first time, an official D&D product, the Essentials Kit, gave full support for two-player games, also known as one-on-one games, one dungeon master, one player. This was huge at the time. It opened the door for couples, siblings, or parent-child duos to experience D&D together without having to go through the pains of getting together an entire group, making it accessible in a way that it had never been before. One of the standout features of the Essentials Kit was the inclusion of a special code to unlock the Essentials Kit bundle on D&D Beyond at no extra cost. This bundle didn't just include the Dragon of Ice Spire Peak adventure, which covers levels 1 to 6, but it also included 3 digital-only supplemental adventures: Stormlord's Wrath, covering levels 7 to 9, Sleeping Dragon's Wake, covering levels 9 to 11, and Divine Contention, covering levels 11 to 13. This was a huge win for digital accessibility, offering a seamless way to expand gameplay far beyond the box with just a few simple clicks. And there was even another bonus inside. The Essentials Kit also included a 50% off code for the player's handbook on D&D Beyond digitally, making it easier than ever to move from the starter set content to more advanced play for your player options. And interestingly enough, the Dragon of Ice Spire Peak takes place in the same region, in fact the same town, as Lost Mine of Phandelver, meaning that both adventures could potentially be played together or mixed and matched to create your own custom game, allowing a new group of players to revisit Phandalin or even continue their story from one kit to the next. It was an exciting way to build upon that initial experience and encourage more long-term play, especially with the included digital expansions. In many ways, it was the natural next step. If Phandelver was your first campaign, then Icespire Peak was your first sandbox, a chance for players to carve their own path. The success of the Essentials kit in 2019 was still part of that larger cultural wave that included more digital platforms and a resurgence of interest in tabletop role-playing continuing to build. The mainstreaming of geek culture and renewed focus on inclusive and accessible play, all of these factors worked together not only to expand the reach of Dungeons & Dragons, but to also cement its place as a dominant force in the world of tabletop gaming forever. The rise of TTRPG content on platforms like YouTube and Spotify meant that potential new players could start to get a feel for the game without even needing to invest in a rulebook. Watching or listening to campaigns and tutorials on these platforms made it even easier to jump into the game with minimal preparation. Hell, the Essentials kit is part of the reason we now have one of the more cherished creators in the space. It's also what drove me to personally become the forever GM of my own home game, and I even went so far as to poorly write a supplement for the kit that gladly never saw the light of internet screens. But enough rambling, let's fast forward to 2022 when the Dragons of Stormwreck Isle came onto the scene. Announced at D&D Direct and released later that year in July, this time around Wizards decided to take things in another little bit of a different direction. The kit came with all the essentials, the pre-generated characters, the rulebook, the dice, and a new adventure. Back to our normal form factor. But they also threw in a bunch of digital tools and made some simple, quick onboarding videos to help people get up to speed on the basics of D&D. It was pretty clear they were trying to make it easier than ever to dive right in, and began really leaning into that growth in the digital space. So the adventure, it takes you to Stormwreck Isle, a place full of mystery, ancient dragon feuds, and some seriously strange characters. It's got a lot of character both in the world and the people who live there. One of the cool things about Stormwreck Isle was the flexibility that it offered. You could take pretty much anything in any order you wanted, and that gave the DM and the players a lot more freedom, which was brought over from the Essentials kit. Plus, the DM was also given tools to adjust difficulty on the fly, something that previous kits didn't go into as much detail on. So if the players were breezing through or getting stuck, it helped you with tweaking things without breaking the flow. It's a shorter adventure than some of the other starter sets, but it still managed to pack a punch, and can serve as a wonderful starting point for a longer campaign or a nice short game for those with less time commitment. And while it's not everyone's favorite, it really is a testament to see how far the starter sets have come. Each one refines different parts of the experience and sharpens the focus in different parts of the game, all in their own way trying to invite players into the world of Dungeons & Dragons. But Wizards of the Coast isn't stopping there. In August of 2024 at D&D Direct, Wizards of the Coast pulled back the curtain on a wave of upcoming products set to redefine the game heading into 2025 with the new 2024 rule set. Amongst the biggest of the reveals was the announcement of the Heroes of the Borderlands, a brand new Dungeons & Dragons starter set slated for release on September 16th, 2025, a full year after we get our core books. This set is meant to integrate the updated mechanics and design philosophies introduced in the 2024 Player's Handbook and Dungeon Master's Guide. But what sets Heroes of the Borderlands apart from past starter sets? And that is its deep roots in D&D history. The adventure is a modern reimagining of the iconic 1979 module B2, Keep on the Borderlands, a legendary adventure penned by Gary Gygax himself. And while it does take place in the same classic region, Wizards has noted that some time has passed in-universe, allowing for both nostalgia and novelty to coexist. One of the more interesting things we know so far is the adventure itself is split across 3 self-contained booklets: the Keep, the Caves of Chaos, and the Wilderness. each of which includes a built-in tutorial. There are some first-of-their-kind components coming with this starter set as well, such as mix and match character tiles that are supposed to streamline character creation process. The other interesting thing is that the set also is trying to introduce support for multiple dungeon masters running the game, a first for any starter set product, and an intriguing tool for teaching or shared campaigns where the players and dungeon master are going to take turns being in charge of the game. We got our first look at the box art and contents during 2024's New York Toy Fair, with Wizards showcasing some of the gorgeous print materials and some of the accessories that players can expect, alongside the 3 adventure booklets and the quick rules guide that comes with every set. For longtime fans, Heroes of the Borderlands is meant to be a satisfying nod to the past that updates a beloved setting with modern sensibilities and rules. For new players, it's shaping up to be what they say is the clearest and most engaging on-ramp D&D has ever offered. I'm sure we'll see pre-orders through D&D Beyond, and if previous release strategies are any indication, you may be able to access the digital versions early by purchasing the physical and digital bundles. We'll be watching this one closely, and I'll continue to update with any new details as they emerge for sure. But you might be wondering, I'm not going to wait for September of this year to get started. Maybe you're watching this video thinking about where you might start, wanting to learn a bit more about the starter sets and what they have to offer. And if you want to know my opinion on where to start, well, it truly depends on what you want to do. I know, the typical YouTube answer, it's subjective, but it really is. If you want to play a more classic fantasy-style adventure that's well put together and probably has the most offering of not only third-party, but also community-based supplemental products and tools to use, Lost Mine of Phandelver is your best bet. If you want a more modular approach with something that also has all kinds of resources for it, a wonderful video series, and an adventure that allows for a level of modularity that truly allows you to spawn your own campaign off of it, or just weave in your own personal details into what's there, Dragon of Icespire Peak is your way to go. But if you're looking for something that's just a small taste, a short adventure, maybe you don't want to commit to the long term, or you need a jumping off point for your new campaign, A Dragon of Stormwreck Isle is that perfect little short self-contained adventure to do just that. The starter set isn't just a product, it's an invitation, a doorway into a world where anything is possible and anyone can be a hero. Whether it was the goblin ambush on the Triboar Trail, the first quest on the Icespire quest board, or the zombie attack at Stormwreck Isle. These box sets didn't just teach the rules, they taught us how to dream and how to imagine again, and how to tell stories together. For many players, that little box was the beginning of something big, a lifelong hobby, a friend group, a passion for storytelling, and that's the magic of a good starter set. Not that it explains everything, but that it gives you just enough to get going, to roll the dice, and to take that leap. And the beauty of it is, you only get to start once. You only get that first goblin fight once, that first natural 20, that first character death or victory, or laugh so hard until you cry moment. But even as the games and the campaigns go on and get more complex, we still carry that feeling with us. The one that started in a little box with a big promise. So whether you're just opening your first set or remembering the one that started it all, take a moment to appreciate what that really is. It's more than paper and plastic. It's the first page of your story. And trust me, that story, it's gonna be a good one. And well, that just about wraps up today's video, but before we go, I gotta know, what was your first experience with D&D or TTRPGs? Whether it was a starter set or another route into the game, I'd love to hear your stories. So let me know down in the comments below so we can keep this conversation going. If you're just starting out, remember, there are many ways to jump into the world of TTRPGs. Whether it's through a starter set, an online group, or just jumping into an existing game, you have things like the free rules and many other games that offer all kinds of quick start guides. Regardless of your path, adventure is waiting for you. And if you found this exploration of starter sets history and evolution thus far interesting, or you just enjoyed this walk back through the past, don't forget to leave a like and smack that subscribe button and bell notification, as it helps the channel out a ton. And if you'd like to further support me and the channel and have access to exclusive perks, we now have channel memberships available here on the site. With that said, thanks guys, and I'll see you on the next one.